Today on Stu's Cookery class, I'm going to be showing you how to slow braise a piece of brisket, and we're going to be doing this like a stew. Now in mine I'm going to be using onion, carrot, leek, mushrooms, garlic, herbs, and I'm going to throw some gravy granules in there just to help thicken it up. But you could add almost any veg you like, or as little veg as you like. You'll see I'm using shallots here, but you can probably just use one onion. I've got some mushrooms, and a lot of this is just what I have in my kitchen, sort of already, some bits left over, some veg that I haven't got round to using up. And it's great for if you've got a few old bits of veg that are still okay, but they're a little past their best and they braise down really well. And you'll notice I'm just chopping everything up fairly small. I'm not a huge fan of big pieces of veg in my stews, and you'll see here that I finally diced my carrot, but you could slice yours if you wanted to in nice big pieces. It doesn't matter that much because it's going to be cooked for so long that everything will be soft and cooked and start to break down. Other things you could add your potatoes into the stew. Either do it like a hot pot and slice them, or you could dice them or just cut them into sort of chunky pieces and throw them in there, and they'll thicken it up with the potato starch, and it'll just be like a really good one pot meal. Now here I'm sealing off my meat, and this has been out at room temperature for about an hour, and this will just help it sort of not dry out. It'll help it not shrink as well. I'm getting it really nice and golden. You'll see that the pan's absolutely scorching hot, and I'm being nice and careful with it. And you'll see in a sec when I pull it out, it's really nice and golden all over. And I'm going to sear every side, so even the two sides that are brown but they haven't got any golden colour on, that golden colour is all flavour. And you can turn it down a little, it's just as long as it's got that really good sear, that really good noise, you'll know that it's frying properly. Now that that's done, I'm actually going to completely take my meat out and throw my onions in. Now you might want to turn the pan down a little here, because you don't want to burn your onions. Now you'll see in the bottom of my pan there's a really dark golden colour, but it's not burnt, and that's fine. Now I'm going to cook my veg off the oniony things first, so I've gone with the onion first and then the leek, and after that it doesn't really matter too much. You could cook your carrots off first and then add your mushrooms, but like I said, this is going to be slow braising down for a long time. The reason it's important to cook your onions off separately is because when onions just get boiled, they give a slightly unpleasant flavour. You don't get that sweetness from them, so it's really important to caramelise them and soften them down. Now the onions will take about 5 minutes, and the leeks will probably take another 5 minutes as well. And once they're both soft, you can add the rest of your veg, whatever it is you're adding into yours, and give that a good stir through. And then you're just waiting for the mushroom to look a little cooked, to look a little wilted. And meanwhile I'm going to add a good few blobs of garlic, and this is sort of personal preference really. You could use a couple of cloves if you wanted to, but I had some garlic paste in the fridge to use up. I'm now going to add about 3 tablespoons of mixed herbs, and this just helps really add some extra flavour. If you had some fresh herbs in your garden, you could add some rosemary or some thyme, even some sage, it could be really nice in there. Now I've just filled my pan up with some water, and I've added some red wine. Now the red wine's completely optional, and you could also use anything from stout to ales and beers. You just want to avoid anything that's too bitter. Now here I'm adding about 4 teaspoons of gravy granules, and this is just to thicken it up, to add a bit of extra body of flavour. Once it gets to this point, I'm going to turn the heat off, pop my meat in with the lid on, and put it in the oven on 160 for about 3 to 4 hours. Meanwhile, we're going to make some dumplings. So I've got 100 grams of suet and 200 grams of self-raising flour in my bowl here, and we're just going to add some water until it forms a sort of soft paste. You could use veg or beef suet, it doesn't matter too much, you will get a little more flavour from the beef suet. And you could add anything to this, so you could add some rosemary, some horseradish, even some whole grain English mustard to add some extra sort of flavour, but I left mine plain and just added a pinch of salt. So once your stew has come out of the oven, you'll be able to have a look at it, and you'll see the meat here is just flaking apart. It's really nice and moist, and that's perfect. I've just shredded this down and popped that back in this stew. It's about 400 grams and that's a really healthy portion for two. And you'll see here I'm just spooning my dumpling mix in really roughly. It's a really nice soft dough, sort of more almost like a really thick batter. Now if your mix is sticking to the spoon, what you can do is if you rinse your spoon off and leave it slightly damp, it won't stick because the fat from the suet won't want to stick to the water. And once you've done that, you can pop it back in the oven, turn it up to 180 degrees and give it 25 to 30 minutes. And you should just see that the tops of the dumplings get really crispy and golden, and they should suck up all that lovely flavour, and they'll help to thicken up the stew slightly as well, because the starch from the flour will sort of leach into the sauce. I served mine with a little mash, and it doesn't really need any veg with it. There's so much goodness in there from all the veg that's cooked into the stew, and as you can see it's really tasty. That sauce is bubbling, it's nice and thick, and if you did want to thicken up the sauce you could add some extra gravy granules before you put the dumplings in, just whisk that in there. You could try using this recipe with a different meat, say using chicken legs, and only braising it for about 45 minutes to an hour on a similar temperature, and it's a really versatile base for any sort of stew or braised piece of meat. And if you like this video, hit that button and consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification so you don't miss any future content. Why not also consider checking out some of my other videos like my midweek meals playlist and my slow braised beef short rib recipe. Thanks for watching.